Hi guys, and welcome to my first campaign diary. So this is going to be just audio, no video, and we're just going to talk about what happened over the last 3 sessions of the Aberrant War. So to start, there is this new war that's going on. People are getting abducted from their homes, from their own cities, including Waterdeep, Neverwinter, Spelljammer Academy has been abducted. What else has been abducted? The Rock of Brawl. All these places have just been taken away, and nobody knows where they went. This, of course, has put the Imperium on high alert. They don't know who is taking everything or taking every person from their city. It just looks like they up and left Mass Effect 2 style. So, that's what they're dealing with, the Imperium, and they found out that maybe Glyth has something to do with it. Maybe they're going off of a hunch more than anything. And this has been the better part of a year that these people have been losing, or people have been getting stolen from their homes. So the Imperium is going to Glyth to launch a massive scale attack on them because they do not believe that they are innocent of abducting all these people. But that is where the political situation is in realm space right now. As for the players, they are currently under the control of a Niyogi warlord named Darmancool, and that has relevance to some characters and others it doesn't really mean anything. But they all got captured by this one dude, and they were in this trance state, but they woke up on the Revenant, and the Revenant had been paid by someone to find them and take them away. They were being chased by beholders from Darmancool's own legion of controlled creatures. So beholders, mind flayers, other Niyogi, Umber Hulks, all that sort of stuff. That's all under Darmancool's control. But none of those could fly as easily as the Beholders, so the Beholders went after this under the orders of, you need to bring back my prisoners and destroy that ship. So that's where the players wake up to. They wake up to this landscape where they are cold. They're on the ship, the Revenant, which is this hunker, almost lazily put together ship. It's made out of wood, and wood melded with metal just to make everything work together, and it has its own spell jamming helm to fly it wherever it needs to go. It's not a very great ship, but it is the ship that they have, and on the front of it they have a crane and a piercing ram. It's actually kind of neat, but it's laid out rough. This person that broke them out of the trance is named Lord Flint. He is a mind flayer, and he told them to get below decks because they're going to destroy the helm. Meanwhile, a beholder came up in front of the ship, and Lord Flint had to go and deal with that one. So the players go underneath the ship, or into the cargo hold of the ship, where they see 3 of these Gouth creatures. They're like beholders, but they're much smaller. They have a singular eye like a beholder. They have multiple eye stalks like a beholder. I think they have 4 or 6 or something like that. But they also have these little eyes on their bodies that give them a crazed look, and that's exactly what they do. They cause people to go kind of crazy. They will stun people just by looking over at them because they're just so psychotic. There's also some spectators. Those are minor beholderkin, and they can wound creatures, and they can charm them. And then there's the big boy. There is a big ass beholder in the cargo hold with them. The only saving grace here is that the crew of the Revenant is on the ship with them, and they are fighting these beholderkin. So this huge combat takes place trying to stop these beholderkin from attack or destroying the helm or destroying the ship, whatever outcome it might be. It's a long and drawn out battle. I think in the stream it takes 3 hours to get through it, maybe 2.5. because this is their first nexus point. They start off the game, they have two choices, and it all comes down to their efforts. They can kill the Beholder and all the Beholder kin, and that saves them from one adventure but takes them on another, or the Beholders destroy the helm and that sends them on another adventure. Well, the Beholder ended up destroying the helm, so the ship immediately started falling, the Revenant started falling out of the sky towards the planet. So I think my players had maybe 2 rounds, so 12 seconds, to do whatever they're going to do to brace themselves before they hit the water. One of the characters, I think it was Ironstar, saw, like, through the hole that the Beholders had made in the side of the ship to get in, there was like this strange, like fractal, blurry, almost like frosted glass bubble being formed in front of the ship. They hit the water that's underneath them, and all of them had to roll Constitution saves. Regardless if they succeed or fail, they're unconscious, but if they failed, they're at 1 hit point, and that just means that they took a really terrible crash when the Revenant hit the water. Now they wake up, I don't know, some undetermined amount of time later, and they discover Visidian, who is a kind of Beholder kin, but he's a Beholder turned like an Alithian, almost. Like, he's not a full-blown Mind Flayer. He is a Mind Witness. You can go and look it up on the internet if you want, but it is a very strange, fleshy, slimy, amphibious-looking creature, and it informs them that they have been able to, like, hold this air bubble around the ship. Visidian also informs the party that there is another Beholder on board, and it is sleeping. They go up to the top deck where they find the Beholder, and yes, it is sleeping, but everything, like, in the Spelljammer is kind of like in this strange, everything's kind of floating, zero kind of G, but there's still gravity. The whole ship is in like a very strange, like, gravity state. They go up to the top deck, they see the Beholder sleeping, they immediately take their chance to try to execute it, but the first blow does not kill it. It wakes up, which spawns the creation of another Beholder, and it spawns the creation of an Eye of the Deep, which is like a Beholder that is adapted to deep sea conditions. So it has like 2 pincers, it has a couple of rays, it has a singular eye, and it's actually like meant for like hand-to-hand combat, for lack of a better term, pincer-to-hand combat. They're able to take out the was sleeping Beholder, and they were able to take out the Eye of the Deep, which cleared the Revenant of any more Beholder kin. With that, they find out that Lord Flynn, like on that piercing ram, when it hit the water, it bent upward, and Lord Flynn is impaled on it. They pull him off of the piercing ram, where they start doing what adventurers do. They start looting him. They find that he has this really cool sword, he's got this really cool jacket. Inside the jacket, there is this note. It says,
"I have amended your fates, but I had no choice. I was too late to stop the Void Rings, and you are my gamble in my 11th hour. They prepare to make a final, decisive strike against Wildspace, to use the Void Rings to slaughter every person in every sphere. Kiral leads them. He abducted the settlements. Although he is a puppet, he is unkillable. His puppet master is unknown. Kiral hunted Anolis and the entity Chronipsin. Their origins are unknown, but are central to the Void Rings. I wish I could help more, but it is all I know, and it is not enough. For now, climb the seamount with Visidian, exploit the turbulent to travel to Toril. If possible, explore the abducted settlements and learn what I could not. May Lady Luck carry you through. X. P.S. Do not let the gods interfere."
So whoever this is gave them this note. They knew that they would survive, which is odd, for lack of a better term, but they don't think too much of it. And they just continue to loot the ship. As they continue to loot the ship, they are able to find like the supplies to the ship, Oh, speaking of the void rings, I think I forgot to mention this earlier in the video, but the void rings are like these black and white, like just these rings wrapping around crystal spheres, kind of like throwing a bunch of like rubber bands around a watermelon, and it's slowly tightening down on the crystal sphere. So people can every once in a while hear it cracking and breaking, and it's causing, the Imperium to get more and more desperate for answers because they don't know what to do. So anyway, back to what we're talking about. They start looting the Revenant for any gear that they can find. Meanwhile, the crew starts waking up. Hal, who is like this owl man, starts talking about somebody named Esgrin, who is apparently like a slod, is what he said he is. Lord Flynn, in his eye, he has like this emerald gem. And Esgrin is controlled by that gem. Hal takes the gem out of Lord Flynn's eye and starts trying to contact Esgrin. Unfortunately, it doesn't do a whole lot for him because Visidian informs him that there is some sort of strange, powerful psionic presence that is preventing the use of any magical divination, which is disrupting the Slod's control gem. So they can't call on the Slod for help, which, is a bit of a bummer. They spend the next few hours just sinking to the bottom of the ocean. They see a whale above them that's has 2 tails, but aside from that, it's just more and more falling. And they fall for, I think, 4 to 6 hours, something like that. But as far as I know, they never said that they rested. So they get the benefits of a long rest because they haven't really been doing anything, but they haven't slept, and they could start imposing exhaustion on themselves if they don't get sleep. So after 4 to 6 hours, they start, Visidian informs them that they're about to hit the bottom, and boom, they hit the bottom. And they see this massive sweeping coral forest, this massive coral forest. It's not small like in our own world. It's maybe a 30 to 50 foot canopy, and they're on the top of it. They're kind of in their own on the top of a spaghetti bowl, right? And that marked the end of the first session. On the second session, they start talking about what they need to do because they are completely lost on what they're supposed to do, which is exactly what I want them to do. I want to let them spin their wheels for a bit, try to figure out a solution, because I feel like if I put my own input on what they're supposed to do into their adventure, it I don't know, it feels like it takes away from the adventure. So I just let them spin their wheels for an hour, because there was no actual time limit. Nobody knows they're here, and they got all the time in the world. Almost all the time in the world. They immediately come up with the reasonable assumption that, oh gosh, we only have so much air, and Visidian only captured so much. It was kind of like capturing air in a balloon. There's only so much that you can breathe in that before the air starts to become toxic, and it starts to poison everybody around, inside of it. So they don't have all the time in the world, but they have a decent amount of time. They start going into the bilge, where these coral tendrils have pierced through the bottom, and they find this strange rock-like creature in the bilge that seemed to have fallen out of one of these tendrils. They think that's weird, but there's obviously life down here because it's taken on a humanoid form. And they decide to explore the area. Perfectly reasonable. And Visidian shifts the bubble, and they start looking around on the underside of the canopy of this coral forest. And down here, it looks a lot more like tunnels than it looks like any forest that they've ever seen. So Visidian informs them that Visidian can project the bubble around a structure. He can also project it around people, and they can have their own personal bubble of air, and it'll no air will be lost when they do that, but air will run out soon, and they need to come up with a solution to get out of here. Otherwise they're going to start suffocating and dying. they decide to enter into the coral forest, and they discover that there are 3 pathways, one behind them. There's one ahead, but it branches off like almost in a Y intersection, right? So there's a left, there's a right, and then there's a right behind them. They decide to go right behind them. As they go that direction, they discover that there are these tracks in the silt. And normally, like, the currents tend to wash away all the tracks, but these ones haven't, which means that they are fresh. And they're strange footprints. They're like hoof prints, but without the hoof. And they're like jagged, like they're not uniform. They're like eroded in a way. As they're investigating these footprints, they follow them forward and they find 2 bodies lying in the silt. Like they still have coral on them. So, like coral, like the polyps, not like all this dead coral around them. They go up, they investigate it, they discover that these things are dead and that they have like swaths taken out of their back where once there were polyps, now there are not. And as they're investigating this, one of these like pale creatures, they're big too. They're like maybe 10 to 15 feet, going from tentacle to top of head, come down on Mr. September. Now these things have like a humanoid upper body, tentacles below, and then their head has 3 circular eyes, and they also have 2 little gills, or 2 large gills along their neck. And this thing just grabs Mr. September, who is our Birdman and Rogue, and attempts to just take off with him. Not good. So they immediately start shooting at this thing. Visidian is able to like paralyze it by restraining it in a telekinetic hold, and they kill this thing. Now this thing is like shot and cut up and beaten to death, but it took a lot of work to take down just one of these guys. They continue forward where they find like more of these coral people, but their calcium carbonate limbs are broken off, like just dismembered in places. And as they continue forward into this what looks like coral people town, they find more and more of this dismemberment, where like there's like a head over there, there's an arm over there, there's like a leg laying in one of the areas over here, and it doesn't look like a good sight. So they head back. They discover that the coral men have had more pieces taken out of their backs, and whatever that creature was that tried to take Mr. September away, the brine dweller, is gone. Not good. But they head back to the nexus point where it's the nexus point that I'm calling is just the place right below the ship where they can return back to the ship anytime they want. Imrian suggests that the party rereads the note that they got off of Lord Flint. And after rereading it, Imrian comments that like the note is strange. Like to us, it would be like getting into a car wreck and then finding a note in your glove box telling you what to do after your specific car accident. It's strange, right? Because how would this person X know anything about what happened? The party follows the instructions to climb the seamount, and they start taking a rest in an alcove because Mr. September and Kree have gained a level of exhaustion because they've just been marching through this whole thing for the last few hours, and they haven't slept. They take a rest in the alcove, and they decide on watches. One of their retainers, Catalyst, does not need to sleep, so he stays up all night watching over, but he suggested that somebody else be out there with him in case, like, he gets taken, away and can't alert anybody outside. So, 2 people on watch. Amrian decides that he wants to take the first 2 watches because he's an elf and he only needs to deal with 4 hours of sleep. So, he deals with the first 2 and then rests for the next 4. Well, on the second shift of Imrian's watch, he gets pulled out of the alcove, jutted up into the ocean, and he's just holding his breath, and the water pressure down here is not crushing him, which is nice, but at the same time there's nothing around. It's just the deep dark blue. After some time, whatever this entity is, places its hand on Imrian's shoulder, and it is a long lost friend of Imrian's. But Imrian realizes that this person is not themselves, that they are meant to like pull information out of them however they can. And the party, alerted by Visidian, because he is like a telepath, he can tell when shit's going down, tells the rest of the party, like wakes them up using telepathy and says something is happening to Imrian. After trying to pierce through whatever this possession is, they eventually succeed. They see this person slowly deteriorating away after they break through this possession and pull Imrian out. During that whole time that Imrian was out and under this possession, like Imrian was just throwing up water, just seawater out of his lungs. And it was not a good time for the party. As soon as they wake up, break him out of the possession, a water elemental appeared out of the thrown up water that Imrian had thrown up. So, with that, we ended session 2. On session 3, we immediately jumped into initiative. We fought the water elemental. It was a long fight. Well, not long, but like it took an hour, I think. They decided that they would finish out their rest and continue to climb the seamount. Once they rested, they continued forward and they found a strange like meadow. What I mean by meadow is that there is this there is no canopy to this place, right? It is just straight up water above them. And Imrian places like her eyes of night, his eyes of night, because he is a Twilight Domain cleric and can bestow his eyes on other people. And using this vision, they see up ahead that there is movement, and there's also like these structures around in this meadow. Very strange. So they start slowly sneaking up to it, where they find like off to the right there's like one of these brine dwellers that has been almost completely eaten by what looks to be like a nautilus, if you guys have ever seen those. And up ahead there's another brine dweller that is fighting with another one of these nautiluses, and they continue forward. Eventually the nautilus senses them and reaches out to grab them. Now, the brine dwellers themselves are here for a reason. What the reason is, the party does not know at this time. They're just trying to figure out what all this movement is. We jump into initiative as soon as the nautiluses find or sense the players. And this took a long time to get through. It took longer than I thought it would be, because the first encounter with the water elemental, I think it took like an hour. This thing almost took till the end of the session. It was like 30 minutes before the session ended. And the idea for this battle is Visidian's air bubble can only extend 60 feet from him. So in total it's 120 foot diameter. So with that in mind, the idea was to split the party away using these nautiluses, which for this battle are essentially just ropers. They just have a few different things to make them more mollusk-like. These ropers pull parties away from one another, so everybody was like, okay, we need to protect Visidian from getting pulled, because if we exit the range that his air bubble is encompassing us in, we are going to get crushed by the ocean above us. So it was like an effort to try to take these things out on two fronts while also trying to protect Visidian. The mollusks, these nautiluses, are indifferent to the party and the brine dwellers, so they attack both of them. They don't care. They're just looking for food, and that's what they're gonna get. So they start pulling in brine dwellers. They start pulling in the party members right next to one another. Well, I think like an hour and a half later, while we're going through this combat, there is this coral kid inside of the structure. They know it's a kid because the The bodies that they saw before were much larger. This kid is standing about knee to hip height, depending on which character you're talking about. And this kid is actually able to kill one of the brine dwellers because of the not even spores, but just the polyps on him can create like a poisonous punch. And it, at the end of the fight with that brine dweller, ended up killing it. So the rest of the party was like, okay, we think that this kid is on our side, which is a good thing to think. And they finish out the combat, they take out the other Nautilus and the other brine dweller, and then they are safe. Mr. September starts to communicate telepathically with this kid because this kid does not speak common. He speaks a different language entirely that only one person could speak, and that was Cree. But they wanted to communicate telepathically, so I didn't even worry about it. The party started asking this kid questions about like any sort of ship that fell from above. This kid has no reference for ships, right? He lives underneath the water. There's like nothing goes above. And the surface of the water, which they call the ripple, is where this kid like susses out that they came from. So instead of calling it a ship, he just calls it a structure that fell from the ripple. The party follows this kid's lead. This kid's name is Koat. And I think they like walk for like an hour, maybe 2 hours, to this bombard that had fallen from the top of the ocean. And this is largely abandoned, unfortunately, for the rest of the party. It is like decrepit. It has a bunch of like algae growing on it. The windows are busted open. Anything that might have been of use is completely gone. But that's not what they're looking for. They are currently looking for the helm. They need a helm to get out of here, right? Well, as they go through this bombard, they discover like it has 3 massive cannons. They discover that there is a captain's log, which is a very long handout, I will admit. It is inspired off of like an H.P. Lovecraft language mixed in with some like Howard Chambers and like a few other inspirations as well. But it details this captain who had gotten a new spelljammer for his ship to take this lockbox and take it to Glyth. This was like, in their timeline, this was like 2 years ago. So this was before the whole shit hit the fan with Glyth. And they were supposed to take this lockbox to Glyth and then come back. It was just a delivery mission. Well, on the way, they got intercepted by a tyrant ship, and this tyrant ship ended up getting a lucky shot and sheared a part of the ship off. That part of the ship contained the spell-jamming helm. So that part of the ship fell out of the sky almost immediately, and their part of the ship that the party is at now just fell like a rock down into the water. This is a gift ship, so these guys are like hardy. They're meant for like huge abuse. So they're able, like most of the crew in there is able to make it out alive. The GIF and Imperium shipcraft is exceptional, and it's able to handle these like deep sea pressures. And as this log goes on, they discover that there is like the people on here are going crazy. The captain knows that there is something like some third party, some bad actor affecting them, but he does not know what it is. And without him knowing what it is, he can't do anything about it, which is really, really bad. He over the course of this whole log, ends up killing some of his crew and then killing his whole crew, having to execute his first mate because he wants this existence over with. It's just a really dark story. But with this whole story, it was meant to provide a story to the players to read if they really wanted to. But it also illustrates the idea that the helm is not here. It is somewhere else. But also, it is like they know that this helm is close by. They just don't know how close by. Well, they go and talk to Koat. They're like, hey, did anything else fall out of the ripple here? Koat doesn't know. He's just a kid. He's out here looking for his father, the Sibyl. The Sibyl is, as he describes it, he's like a prophet type character, and Koat comes to the conclusion that the party is existing as part of a legacy, like not even a legacy, a prophecy that his father told before he was kidnapped by the Brine Dwellers just after this place fell. He believes that the party might be able to help him. From what he remembers, the prophecy is something about when the people of the Ripple fall, they will need help and we will help them, but then they will save us. The players, or I should say the party, really are having a tough time believing it. They don't know if this is a magical thinking or not, but regardless, they decide that they need to go to the temple where the High Acolyte is, who knows this prophecy and knows more about what's going on than Koat. And that's where we wrapped up our third session of the Aberrant War. Now, we took a break off this week so I don't get burned out, but next week we will be playing at the same time, 5 p.m. PST, and we will see what happens at the temple. Well, I hope you guys had a fun time listening to this, and I will see you guys later. Bye-bye!